The other thing you mentioned is Lookout Mountain Labs. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, whoa, because I've come across that recently. And for anyone who doesn't know listening, it was a classified US military film studio in Hollywood in the heart of, or in what you call Laurel Canyon, which ties into other things which you probably know. But uh, for anyone who doesn't know this, it's the lab, the film lab there that the military had was the size of the big studios, but it was only declassified, I think, about the 70s or 80s, and it's only really being reported. Not many researchers have come across it until recently. And what I looked at like they had several sound stages. They were making more than they were making more films than all of Hollywood put together at one point. This is like in the
Yep.
late 60s. They had they had so many different film people coming in, so cinematographers, editors, all that. But they would all be signing contracts to say it was classified to such a degree that they could never talk about it. Now, officially, very little of their films have actually been declassified, but supposedly it's just, what would you say, nuclear bomb testing, and then they would shoot that out in the desert or in other countries like Pacific Islands, and they'd let off nuclear bombs, and then they'd edit all that back at this facility. But they've only ever declassified about 5% of what they've shot there. So do you have any suspicions of what else they might have filmed there? Like is it propaganda? Is it
I assume it is. I mean, there were
right?
so many people involved in it. I mean, there were the
Mm,
actors like John Ford and Jimmy Stewart and
right.
Ronald Reagan and Bing Crosby and Marilyn Monroe. Um, and but other people like Walt Disney, and of course Walt Disney he was working with the government to make propaganda films for the war. That was what he did, and um, from what I've read, he was also making porn, but I wasn't there. I can't say for sure, but he could kind of be bought from my reading. So. Um, these people were working together and creating something that was obviously not just bomb tests. I mean, why would they need Marilyn Monroe for a bomb test film in 100,000 square feet and all this stuff that they had there? And so, yeah, some people have made some interesting speculations, like
Mm,
the moon landing film was actually filmed there by Kubrick, for example. I don't know,
right.
but and then some people have claimed that there was traumatic mind control movies filmed there. I don't know that either. I don't really
Okay.
particularly trust
But
those sources.
it just gets scary to me when you consider, like I saw one film that was shot there that wasn't, it has been declassified, I think, but it wasn't bomb testing. But what it was they were saying that US Marines were saving people in the Philippines, and it was on a beach in the Philippines, and it was during a typhoon, and the US Marines came in, and but they showed the earlier version of it. It was actually eventually released on the news, okay? But the earlier version it was a documentary to show the potential of what US Marines can do. But then
Oh,
they
interesting.
eventually used that footage to say that we rescued some Filipinos here.
Oh,
And I think at one
oh,
point
that's
they were,
very
yeah,
interesting.
I think at one point they were looking to go into the Philippines more than they did. They were in there militarily, but not as much as potentially they were planning to. But so then I just think, when you ponder what special effects can do, and all these, they had some um, film special effects people who were cutting edge for the time working for them. So it gets quite scary what they could have filmed and released as news to me.
Yeah, I think
Mm.
I mean there's so much of that being done now. They make all these things that look like they've
Yeah.
happened, but they've actually not happened at all, or they've happened someplace else and they're pretending it's there. So I assume that they were doing that kind of thing then,
Mm.
and but maybe they weren't all released to the news, for example, maybe some of them were released to individuals, and those
Yeah,
individuals saw them and thought, oh, this is what's going on,
that's
and it
true.
was a way of convincing them to do something. And yeah, that location is interesting. It was eventually
Mm.
bought by a rehab place called 180, and that place that was closed down because there was all this negligence and insurance fraud and murders and stuff, right? So then the actor Jared Leto got it, and then he eventually sold it, and then so when in one of my novels, then you see the full, that you really go into Lookout Mountain Labs much more. The backstory to the series is that the prequel really goes into that more, but the Lookout Mountain Labs is the location for this production company called Ehro, and Ehro is working with the Nevermind agency to do exactly what you were saying, to create these movies that are propaganda and getting people to believe things for their agenda.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole reading Glossolalia at least, and I'm just starting the second one, Remember to Recycle, but it's you start to get it is that what I talked about, this confusion, disorientation, but that would be what so reading it, I'm feeling that in a good way, like I'm going on the journey, and those are the emotions. And then when you talk about things like Lookout Mountain Labs, where who the hell knows what they shot, and we know what special effects how good they are. um it sort of makes you realize if you were involved in all this, you would be questioning almost everything. What is real?
Lookout Mountain Air Force Station, a photographic installation of the Aerospace Audiovisual Service Military Airlift Command, and home of the 1352nd Photographic Group, containing facilities to accomplish all phases of photography. Staffed by both civilian and military filmmakers of the United States Air Force. The administrative function is housed in a portion of this modern building in the San Fernando Valley, a 15-minute courier drive from the main gate. The organization's mission: photographic documentation of Air Force activities, the production of scientific films, technical films, training films, informational motion pictures, for the Atomic Energy Commission, for joint Army and Air Force exercises, for civil defense, for the Air Force, as well as other government agencies. Films requiring animation may get their start in this division. The artist inking this cell is only one of an experienced team with special skills in all phases of technical animation. The completed cell, as it is finally photographed here, must often effectively portray an abstract or extremely complex idea, the workings of intricate mechanisms, or a cross-section of an atomic weapon. The camera division is completely equipped for both stage and location photography. In just a moment, we'll see some clips from documentary coverage and the many productions that have passed through this laboratory. Laboratory operations require a high degree of skill and scientific control to process the many types of film handled here and exposed by not only our production unit, but others dispersed around the world. Sound requirements are fulfilled in a completely rebuilt and modern department, incorporating equipment that will allow technicians to transfer 12 effects tracks simultaneously. How does this all come together? What are the films like that are produced here? Well, here, in one of our projection rooms, let's have a seat and take a brief look at some of our typical accomplishments. The Air Force Missile Mission, starring Jimmy Stewart, produced and photographed here at Lookout Mountain to explain weapons and policy, to show how both planes and missiles are needed for our defense. Newscaster Walter Cronkite introduced and narrated another of our films, Alert in the Pacific, showing how and where the Air Force is deployed. In a series of people-to-people films, we are also helping the East to meet the West.